Welcome to the 12th video in this video series on building an e-commerce website using React, Redux, GraphQL, and Firebase. Now, in today's lesson, we're going to be building our product page. And as you can see here, we'll be rendering out our products with a thumbnail, a title, price, and an add to cart button. Now, before we get started, I just want to take this opportunity to encourage you to check out my official YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/SimpleTut, not only to watch my other videos, but also to check out the official playlist for this series, which I will be linking to in the description of this video. And this is just a great way for you to find the other videos in this series, but also get updates and find future videos that I will be posting and sharing in this playlist. I also want to encourage you guys to check out the official GitHub repository for this project. At the end of each of the videos, I'm creating PRs and merging with this project on GitHub. So if you want to compare your code with mine, or maybe you just want to clone the entire project, I encourage you guys to do that. Of course, you can check out our official website, which is simpletut.com. And of course, our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/simpletut. And of course, you can use that to not only like and get content updates from us, but also to get in touch. Once again, I'd just like to encourage you guys to like, comment, and subscribe. By the end of this tutorial, we will have built our products page, but we don't only want to allow users to scroll through our catalog. We want to allow them to add products to their cart. We want to allow them to search and sort different types of products. Now, in this website, we want to allow them to sort between women's and men's clothing or products in general. And they'll be able to do that through the UI of the front-end website, the application. Now, in preparation for this video, I've gone into my admin, and using the UI that we've built in previous tutorials of this series, I've added products. Now, in total, I've added 9 new products, both for men and women. I've added 6 men's products and 3 women's products. And I've done that because within the front end, I want to filter between those different types of products and be able to show you not only how it works, but how we can write the logic to handle that. Now, in this video, I'm going to show you how to actually just simply render out the products. And in the next video, we're going to actually apply the logic to sort those products on the front end. So we can finally make a start. And what we want to do is, first of all, is just create our new page. So to do that, I'm going to come over to my text editor. And I'm sure that by now you are very familiar with the application and the application architecture. But if you are new to this series and you have any questions, then feel free to revert back to any of the previous lessons in this series to familiarize yourself. But what we need to do to create our new page is go into our pages directory. We're going to create a new folder, and we're going to call this search. And we need to add an index.js file into this folder. And we need to create our search page component. This is going to be a functional component, so all we need to import here is React. We're going to import that from React itself. And then we're going to actually create our component. So as I said, this is our search page, so we're going to call it search. And it's a functional component, so all we're going to do here is return a div, which I'm going to apply a class name to of my search page. And then we're going to export this, of course, and it is our search component. Now I'm going to put in some dummy text here because I want to see that this is rendering in the browser. But we need to actually create our route. And as you know from previous lessons, we do that in our app.js. The first thing we need to do is import the component itself. So I'm going to import my search page component here under my homepage import. And we're going to import that from pages/search. And we can come down I'm going to add this route under my homepage route, and I'm going to just create that new route. The path is going to be /search. The path can be anything that you want, and then we're going to use the render prop to actually render our component within our page layout, right? So what we want to do here is, of course, we want to use the main layout, but then we want to render our search page component. So that's actually going to be enough for us to see that in the browser. So let's come over to the browser, and we're going to have to insert this into the URL directly because we don't have a link in the navigation yet. We're going to enter that, and you can see that the page is appearing. We have our dummy text, so we know that it's working. There's a bit of a margin issue, but that's nothing that we can't address. So more or less, this is looking good. So the next thing that we need to do is actually return to our text editor. And we need to actually create the component that we will handle our fetch to get the products from the back end of our application, from Firebase. Now, the good thing is that this is going to be really easy because we've already written all of our sagas, all of our code that will actually go out and get the products from our Firebase store. So what we need to do is call those same sagas to actually get what we need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to my components folder, and I'm going to create another new folder, and this time I'm going to call it products. And within products, I'm going to have my index.js file. I'm also going to have my styles file. So it's styles.scss. And within products, this is going to, of course, be another functional component. So I'm going to import React from React. And then I'm going to have const products. It's going to be functional component. And we will return. For now, let's just return a div with a class name of products. And then, of course, we want to export default products. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is actually fetch our products, and then we need to destructure that from our Redux store and map it in the component. So to do that, we need to import a couple of more things. So the first thing is we need the useEffect hook from React. And we're going to use this in a similar way to component did mount. We're going to use it to dispatch our action. Of course, that means we need to dispatch the action itself that we want to dispatch. So we're going to import that from our Redux folder, products, and then our products actions. And of course, the action is the fetch products start action. But of course, we'll need some things to handle that. So in addition to those, we'll need to import from React Redux. We need the useDispatch hook, and we also need the useSelector hook. So we're going to use useDispatch to dispatch our action. So to access dispatch, we'll simply say const dispatch equal and call the useDispatch hook. And then that will give us access to dispatch. We'll use that within our useEffect hook, which takes a function and an array. We're going to pass an empty array because it has no dependencies, and we never want this to rerun. We only want to run this code when this component is initially mounted. So all we're going to want to do is just call dispatch and pass it our fetch products start action. So that's going to actually go out and fetch the data and update our Redux store. We're already handling that from the code that we wrote in a previous tutorial. But what we now want to do is actually use this useSelector hook to actually get hold of the data from our Redux store. So to do that, we're going to need to write a map state function here. We're going to destructure from our Redux store our products data. And then what we'll do, very simply, is we're going to assign products. We're going to assign products our products data and products. Now that we have this map state function, we simply pass that to our use selector function, and then we can access products from that. And then we can return and run some checks. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll obviously just add in a guard. So I'm going to say array.isArray, and we'll say we'll pass products. Products. So I just noticed actually that the name of our data, that the name of our state, which is products, is the same name as our products component, which is my bad. I didn't notice that before. So it was a slight oversight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename the component. No harm done. We're not actually using this anywhere. I'm going to rename this to product results. All right. And I'm going to just update the export. And that just means that it's not going to be the same anymore. So I think it can get a bit confusing if we left that as the same name. So I think that our state and our component should definitely have a distinction between them in terms of the actual name. Of course, we want to check that this is false also. So if this is false, then we want to return null. But then we also want to have an additional guard here, and we're going to check that our products.length is greater than well, we want to check if it's less than 1. If it's less than 1, we're going to return something a bit different. What we're going to do is we're going to return basically this div, but we'll have a message here. So we'll just enter maybe a p tag here, and we'll just say something to the effect of no search results. And then, okay, so now that we fetched our products, we're ready to render them out. So within my products div tag here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to map my products. So I'll say products.map, and then I'm going to get the product and the position, and then we'll do an explicit return, and we're simply going to have another div here for now. But what we'll do is we will destructure some things from our product. And the things we want to destructure will be our product thumbnail, our product name, and our product price. And then we need to add another guard here, right? So we need to check, for example, that this is valid. So one thing that we'll do here is we'll check that we have our product thumbnail. So if we actually, we'll check that we don't. So we'll say product thumbnail if we don't have it, if we don't have our product name. And we also need to validate our product price, but 0 can actually validate to false, but we actually have a value. We have 0. So what we want to do also here is we want to validate that it's not null. So to do that, we'll say type of product price not equal to undefined. And then all we'll do here is just return null if any of those are true. So actually we want to say equals to undefined. If it's equal to undefined, it means it's null, in which case we need to return null. Because we need to make sure that we have all of these three things. Okay, so now that we've done that, we're mapping over. So we need to add in our key here because we're mapping, and this is React. And then we can simply render this out. So for now, I'm just going to render my product name. So I'll do that here. And underneath that, I'll have my product price as well. Okay, so this has given us something that we can see in the browser. So let's go back over to the browser, go to our search page. Again, we don't have a link in the navigation, so we'll need to insert that into the bar. And you can see we are still seeing that dummy text. So I forgot that we need to actually render the products component. So now just keep in mind here that I've also renamed this to product results, and I updated the export here, but I didn't update the folder name. So I'm going to also update the folder name here to product results. Update imports, let's say no. And then all we need to do is come over to our search component and import our product results component. So we're going to import that from our components folder, and inside of this we have our product results component. So then all I need to do is simply render this component, and if I come back over to the browser, you'll see that I'm now rendering all of my products correctly. Now at the moment it doesn't look like much. We're also not rendering out our thumbnail, but it is now showing in the browser. So the first thing we need to do is make this look a little bit nicer. We can do that with a combination of HTML and CSS, but mostly the more complicated logic has now been written. So the first change that I want to make to this is that we also want to have a heading here. So I'm going to add in a page heading. So I'll add in a H1, and I'm just going to add in here browse products. Let's save that, come over to the browser. You can see here that we have still got that margin issue, which we can easily fix. So we have our products class here. I'm just going to apply a class here, and we'll add in a margin here, something like 20 pixels top and bottom. We'll say it's display block, width of 100%, and a padding of 0 and maybe 10 pixels right and left. Okay, let's come back over, and you can see that it's taken a bit more shape. Actually, I'm going to remove the padding. I'm just going to set this to 0 pixels, and you can see that this looks, already a lot nicer. So the first thing that we want to do is we actually want to do a little refactor on our products component. So at the moment, what we're doing is we're mapping our products, and then we're rendering them all in this component. And I think that this component is getting a little bit too big, a little bit too complicated. So within my product results folder, I'm going to create another folder just called product. And inside of this, we need another index.js file. We're going to import React from React. And then again, it's a functional component. It's just going to be called product from, sorry, it's not an import. And what we want to do is, again, we want to have an explicit return. And we need to export default product. And again, for now, I'm just going to have a class name here of product. But then what we'll do is we're going to destructure some things from the props. So at the moment, as you can see here, we have these three items here that we are currently rendering within our product. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to import at the top of this file. I'm going to import product from product. And then what I'll do is, rather than render the actual items here within this component, I'm just going to render my product. But we need to pass it some things. So I'm going to say const config product. And then I'm going to pass this as a prop to the product component. And all I'm going to pass is these 3 items, right? So we want to pass our product thumbnail, our product name, and our product price. We're going to use this same God here. We're actually going to use the same God within our product component. So I'm just going to copy and paste that. And of course, we also want to destructure the same items from our props that this component receives. And then we can build this out the same way. So if I was to simply return here the product name, for example, this will work. So I can save that and come back over to the browser. And you'll see that now I'm just rendering the names. But if I actually look and I use my DevTools, I go into components, you'll see that I'm rendering all of these product cards here, right? So these are all my product components for each of the different components here. And you can see as well, if I click in here, you can see the props that are being passed. If I move between these items, you can see the name is changing. The image and the price are the same for all of these products. As again, these are just placeholder products for us as we develop this layout. So what I also want to do is I want to have a 3-column layout. So let's look at how we can build that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to apply some basic CSS styling to this. So what I'm going to do, first of all, is I'm going to render out a few different things. So the first thing I want to do is I want to render my my thumbnail, right? So we're going to say thumb, and we're going to render our thumbnail. So we'll say we want an image tag with a S with our source, which is going to be our product thumbnail, and then we'll also add an alt tag here, which will be our product name. So that's our thumbnail. And then we're going to have, let's add our details. So within this, we're going to say, we're going to have a class of details, and we're going to have another unordered list with a few list items. So here we're going to render within a p tag, or maybe a span. We're going to render a product name. I'm then going to duplicate this, and I'm going to render out my price. So as you can see, this is starting to take a bit more shape. But if I look at this in the browser, you'll see that the images are huge. They're just kind of duplicated on the page. It's not looking good. So we need to clean this up with some CSS. So that's going to be really easy to do. We just need to come over to a product. And again, this is Sass, so I can use this tree structure here. And I'm actually going to take it out of products. I don't want to have this nested within products. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign a percentage width here. So if I look at this and I just pull up my calculator, right? Let's actually talk about this. So imagine I have a 12-column grid, right? A grid of 12 columns. And I want a 3-column row. So I would divide the total number of grid columns by the number of columns I want to have in my layout, which is 3 column, which gives me 4. I can then divide that by 12, which is the total number of columns, and times that by 100. It gives me a percentage. I'm going to take that percentage and apply that as a width. I'm going to float this, so I'll say float left, And I'm also going to add a padding here, something like 0.10 pixels. I want to make sure that I have a margin. And I'm going to assign a fixed height of something like maybe, let's say for now, 250 pixels. So this is rem, so I'll say 225 rems. And then what I'll do is, if I come back over here, I need to just fix that image. So I have this thumbnail class, which is here, and I'm going to target that thumb. I'm just going to assign this as display block width of 100%. And then I need to target the actual image, make sure that's display block and it has a width of 100% and a margin of 0. And actually double thinking this, I'm going to increase the height here to around 550 pixels. Now I'm using rems, so considering my root font size is 10 pixels, I just divide that by 10. So if I wanted 550, I just do 55.0 rem. It gives me 550 pixels. And also I want to have a bottom margin here. So on the product in general, I'm going to have a 20 pixel bottom margin. And then what I can do is come back over to the browser and show you what this looks like. So this looks pretty nice. You can see that the images are there. Everything's kind of starting to take more shape. But we also need to style the details here. So we have the price, and we have the we have the price, and we have the product name. So what I'm going to do is come back over to the browser, and what we need to do is just beside the actual price here, we're going to add our currency symbol, right? Which is, for me, it's pound. For you, it might be dollars. If you wanted to get really advanced, you could add a currency selector and actually have currency within the site. But for this application, we're just going to hard code this to be either to be Great British Pound or US dollar. For me, it's going to be pound. And then all we need to do is actually assign to the spans a class name, right? So for this, it's going to be my headline or name, and the price is just going to be price. So here we'll say price. So within details, so underneath my thumb class here, I'm going to target details. And again, this is going to be display block width of 100%, margin 0. We don't want any padding either. And then we'll target our unordered list and our list item. Make sure that we have 0 margin and 0 padding on that. But then what we'll do is we'll target our list items. We'll say list style type none. And we want to make sure that this is also display block with a width of 100%. And probably add a margin on the list items, something to the effect of maybe 5 pixels. So that would be 0.5 rem. And then what we'll do is we'll target those classes. So first of all, we have name, right? So for name, we want this to be a font size of something like maybe 30 pixels. We want a line height of 1.2, and then we'll have a font weight of, let's say, 400, and we will we need to add in also here text align left, and I think that should be fine. But then for our price, so we'll target price. What we'll do is we'll set the price font size to something like maybe 12 pixels. So it'll be 1.2 rem. And the line height of this will be 1 because it will always be on the same line. And again, the font weight here should be 400. Now let's check that in the browser and see what that looks like. So it's not actually targeting it. If I come back over to the browser, it's because I've treated this as if it was a class on the list item. It's not. It's actually a span inside of the list item. So we don't need the and. And there you go. It kind of looks what I want. It's not quite right. I don't think the sizes are right. Let me tweak that a little bit. I think this should be smaller, maybe 25 or maybe 20. I think maybe 22 pixels, and I think I'll increase this to maybe 16. So that looks a lot better. I think I like that a lot more. I think we need a bit of space. I think I might reduce the overall size. So I think maybe I'll decrease the height of the product container maybe to 400 pixels. And I think also we should have a bit of a margin on our details. I'm going to add that just as padding here. So I'm going to add something like 10 pixels on the top and bottom, but not on the left and right. And yeah, that looks a lot better. I think it should be something like, I think we do need a bit more of a height though. I think it should be 450 on the product. Yeah, that looks a lot better. That looks a lot better. We have some extra padding around the outside. If you kind of look at the products here, you can see we have padding on the left and right side of each of these product cards, which is causing it to misalign with our heading here. So what we can do is the wrapper here that we have. So on products or product results, we're going to wrap our product results here. Right, so let's wrap this in another div. Let's add our product results. So I'll say class name, product results. And what I'll do is within my styles up here for products, I'm going to have product results with a negative margin, right, of 10 pixels. So we'll say minus 10 pixels. Come back over to the browser and you'll see this now aligns perfectly with our heading, which is what we want. So this looks really nice. We have our products, but one thing that you'll notice is that they're not ordered. And this is also true for our manage products page. If I come back over to my admin, you'll see that I've added products, but we have women 1, men's 1, and I did add them in the correct order. So what I'll do is I'll come over to my Firebase store, and as you can see from products, we have this created date, which was a new timestamp. So what I can do is I can use this created date and actually update where we actually fetch products. So this is just going to be a really small refactor, but we're going to come back over to, let's come over to Redux, products, and our products helpers. And this is our helper function that we use to fetch products. So we're fetching from our Firestore, our products collection. And what we're going to call is order by, and we're just going to order by default the created date. When we change it, when we make that change, if I come over now to manage products, for example, you'll see everything is now ordered. So we have men's product 1, 2, 3, 4, and then likewise with women and any product that we add here. Let's do the same thing. Let's come over to our search page here. And let's look at our products, and you can see that they are now also ordered correctly. But we are also rendering all the products. We're not sorting them yet. So you can see women's and men's are here on the same page. They're not being sorted. So we do need to add a little bit more to the UI and the logic to handle that. But for now, this is perfectly fine. Okay, so things are looking pretty good right now. And I am happy with it, but I want to highlight one small problem, and that is just with the height of these individual product cards. So if I just show you what we've done here, if I come over to DevTools, if I select one of these products here, this is one of the product cards, you'll see and you know that we've added this fixed height. And we've done that for a couple of different reasons, which I won't get into. But the problem with assigning a height like that here is that as we scale responsively, the height will always remain the same, right? So these cards are always going to have the same height. but things inside them, like for example, the image itself is scaling, right? Because it's scaling because it's 100% width, and the width of these cards is a percentage, so it is scaling. But the actual height of the wrapper, the actual card, does not, which is a bit of a problem. Now you could add in media queries at breakpoints to reduce the size of things, but it's never really going to work that well. But there is a solution to this, and that is using CSS Flexbox. And it's actually really easy. It's a really simple change to make. And I'm going to show you how to use that. So let's come back over here to our styles here. And as you can see, we have this fixed height. We want to remove that height. And rather than doing what we were doing here with floating left, let's just remove that. But we still want the percentage width. That does not change. What we're going to do instead is on product results, we're going to add display flex. And then we want to add flex wrap and wrap. Come back over to the browser. Is that these columns will now scale, right? So what this does is it looks at each of these rows, which is determined by the width of them, right? So as you know, I wanted a 3-column row, which is what this has created, right? And what it does is it looks at the tallest item on the row, the tallest column, and it sets all of the columns on that row to be of an equal height. So it will scale responsively, and it will always be the same height as the tallest column on that row. Now, the reason I sometimes avoid using CSS Flex is because the support on legacy browsers, I'm talking about IE 11 specifically, is not that good. And even in some versions of Edge, for example, you will find issues with using things like CSS Flex or CSS Grid. And certainly if you're working in a large company using Flex, you will have to add in fallbacks and support for older legacy browsers. So these are all considerations that you need to make. My advice is use it sparingly and just really consider where you're using it. And that doesn't mean don't use it, but just make sure that you test on all the devices and all the browsers before you deploy to production if you are working on a large scale application and that matters to you. But of course, this looks a lot nicer. It's much better. So more or less, this is in a very good place. So the final thing that we need to do here is we need to add in our add product to cart button. So let's go ahead and work on that. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is add in our add to cart button. This is going to be a button that we want to sit at the bottom of these cards. And it's just going to say add to cart, and we're actually going to program those buttons in a later tutorial when we start working on our cart, but we want to get the button in place in this tutorial. So to do that, let's come back over to our text editor, and as you can see here in our components folder, we have already created a button component in an earlier tutorial. And this is very reusable. We can use this because it allows us to pass other props. And it's already styled, which helps with consistency throughout the site. So what we're going to do is within our product component here, we're going to import our button component from the component itself. So we'll go into our components folder. We have our forms and our button component. And then all we'll do is we will render that. So we'll create another list item here. And we'll just insert our button component, right? Now, what we want to do is we want to say add to cart, and then we need to actually configure it, right? So we'll say here const config add to cart button, and then we can pass any any props that we want. So the first prop is going to be type, and we're going to add type of button. Now we will need to configure this further in a later tutorial, so we will return to this, but for now that's really all we need to do. Now otherwise, let's just come back over here to our results component, and this looks pretty good. I am happy with this, but I do think we need a bit more of a margin here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this in a div tag. So what I'll do is I'll just wrap this in a div. And I'll add a class name of add to cart. I think I wrote card. I meant cart. And I did the same thing on the constant, so we're going to need to fix that. Apologies, and if you caught that, well done. Okay, let's come back over to the style sheet, and again, where we're looking, let's do this. What we want to do is just add a margin here of, let's say, 20 pixels. Come back over to the browser, and it just spaces it out a little bit, and I think that looks really nice. So this looks really good. I think we need a bit more space here. So I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to add, let's say, something like 30 pixels here. That just adds a bit of a space. So I think that looks really nice, and I'm really happy with that. Okay, so the final thing that we want to do in this tutorial is add a link to this page in our navigation. So to do that, it's going to be really easy. We already have the component. All I need to do, I'm just going to close these to make it a little easier for you to follow. In our components folder, we have our header. We'll come into that. And we have these call to actions, which is our navigation, and we have our logo here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a new navigation, right? So this is actually going to be our nav. So I'm going to wrap this in a nav, and I'm going to have my unordered list and my list item, and we're going to have two links here, right? We're going to have one for home and one for our search page. What we're going to need to do is actually import something else from React Router DOM. So we'll import from React Router DOM. We want to import our link component, and then we can use it. So all we have to do here is just insert our link, right? And what we actually want to do is just specify the to path, which in this case is going to be /search. And then we just have to add in the actual text. So we'll just say search. Now I'm actually going to add another link here because I also want a link in the navigation to go home. So it's just going to be /. And then what we can do is actually look at this in the browser. Oh, okay. So I'm getting an error because I already had imported link. So I don't need to re-import that. I made a small mistake there. But as you can see, it's not really looking like how I want it to look. It's kind of broken the header, so we're going to need to fix that. So what we'll do is we'll come back over to our header CSS here, and we'll need to make a small change. So our call to action is positioned absolute, and our logo is also absolute. So what we're going to do is we're going to target our nav, right? And we want to set this to be display block width of 100%, margin of 0, and we'll also set the padding here to 0 as well. We want to target the unordered list and the list item inside. We want to make sure that the padding and the margin is 0 on that too. But then we'll target the unordered list. We'll set the list style type to none. And we want to make sure that this is something like display inline block. On the unordered list, I'm going to set the text align to center. And then what we'll do is we'll target the link itself inside of that. And we want to make sure that we set the same styling here as we have on our call to actions. So that's going to be a font size of 18 pixels, and the rest as you can see here. So let's just see what that looks like. That looks pretty good actually, but we're not centered vertically. So to fix that, what we'll do is we're going to set the height of the nav to 100%, and we're going to set the height of our unordered list and list item to also be 100%. And then our line height we will set to 100% and a vertical align of middle. Okay, so let's check that in the browser. So it's still not vertically centered it. Let's just check that. So I'm not sure why. So all of this is 100%. The height of the header is 6.5 rem. So instead of setting this to 100%, the line height to 100%, what I'll do is I'll set that to 6.5 rem. And that centers it, right? So that works. So what we'll do is now just add a bit of space. So on the list items, I'm going to add another margin from the right and left, something like 10 pixels. And that looks good. So we now have a link to search and we have a link to the home page. And that brings us to the end of this video tutorial where I showed you how to create our front-end product page. Now, one thing I will mention here is that I have been talking to you guys about adding in that functionality to sort between the different categories, the men and women's products. I will be showing you how to do that in the very next episode of this tutorial series. I don't want to make this tutorial too long because I think it will be harder to follow, and I think it would be worth its own dedicated tutorial. But of course, we now have the products rendering out on the page, so we'll be able to focus entirely on adding in that sort functionality. That does bring us to the end of this video tutorial, so I just want to thank you once again for following. I look forward to the next video, and of course, once again, please like, comment, and subscribe.